In this video, I'm going to be talking about properties and fields. What are they? What do they have in common? How do they relate to each other? What do these accessors mean for properties? And why should we or how do we use or pick any of these accessor types? So let's start. In the last videos, we have worked with this person class, and also in this video, we are going to keep working with this simple, or let's say empty person class. Okay, so let's start with fields. What are fields? This is the definition of a field taken from Microsoft website. A field is a variable of any type that is declared directly in a class or struct. Fields are members of their containing type, which means if I declare a field now, this field, for example, public integer ID, this is called a field. Is a variable, which means this is a variable of any type. It could be integer, it could be string, it could be float, double, it could be another object type, so another class type, doesn't matter. And here we have an access modifier for this field, which means is this determines if it's accessible or not outside of this class. Okay. And we can also say this field is a member of its containing type, which means this is a member of the person class. Type here means class. So because when you declare a class, it means you are creating a type. Okay. Before we didn't have what is called properties. So how did we get the value and assign the value of these fields? If you have any experience with Java, this will look familiar. What we used to have is called a getter method and a setter method. Let's see how do we implement a setter method and a getter method. This is the setter method is public void set id, and we have an integer value here. You can call it whatever you want, but I'll call it value. You will know why later. And we simply say id equals value. In this way, I can set this id, this field. Okay. Also, I can get a public integer get get id and return the value of this return the value of this id. In this way, I have implemented the getter, which is this one, and the setter for this field id. Okay. The question is now, because the id, this field is public, I can easily come here, create a person object, person equals new person. I can say person dot id equals 1. As you can see, I never had to use the set id or get id, but it doesn't work like this. Usually this is in public, this is private, and also as a convention we write the private fields always small letters, and we start them with underscore. So if I come here now, I need to change all of these. Okay. Now if I come here, I have no way of setting this id directly without using a set id, setter. And when I want to get this person's id, I can say person dot person dot get id. Okay, so enable to print this value, I will have to write console.writeLine, and now if I run the program, I will get the ID of 1. Okay, so another question here. Why should I make all this if I can make this public and go use the, the dot operator? So as I did here, why should I not stick to this, for example? Why am I making set ID and get ID? I mean, why? I can make it just like this and save all this work. Okay, the idea behind this is in the set here, I can come here and add some validation, which means I can say if the value is greater than 0, for example. If the value is greater than 0, I can set the ID to this value. Otherwise, this value is not acceptable. So now if I come here and try setting this ID to 0, or let's say -5, which is not bigger than 0, and start my program, I will get 0. Okay, I will not get -5, because this now doesn't allow setting the ID to values smaller or less than 0. Okay, this is one of the reasons, which is validation. And not only validation, this is called hiding the implementation from who is using this class. So who's using this class now, he doesn't know that behind this set there is some check. There are so many things we can do here. If this was a string, if this was a name, we can, for example, you can check if this string is not empty, if this string is longer than 5 characters, this string matches some certain pattern. No matter what you want, you can always have a first line defense, I can call it, before you can set private field, because most of the time this field is going to be used throughout your class. Okay, the get is easy, but we need it now because we have made this private. We can make it public only to get the ID, get the value of it. No, but we we have to make a method called get ID in order to get the value of ID. This is how we used to do it before the properties. Now a property. Also, this is the definition of a property taken from Microsoft website. A property also is a member that provides a flexible mechanism to read, write, or compute the value of a private field. As you can see, it looks like this definition looks exactly like what we did over here. We have a private field. It provides a flexible mechanism to read, which is get, and write, which is set, the value of a private field. If you keep on reading, if you kept reading this definition, I mean, the rest of this definition is going to be talking about hiding this implementation, because all what you do with properties is using the dot operator, but automatically you come into what is called set and get. We will see this right now. Okay, let's comment this out. We don't need this anymore. Okay. As you can see, this is a property now. When you write public integer ID and you have these codes here, and get and set, this is going to be, let's say, when it's compiled, it's going to be extracted to something or expanded to something like this. Okay, that's why I said it's hiding implementation. Now, for example, I can come here, take this out and write id equals 1, or let's say 5. Also here, I can say id, and now everything works the same. I need to stop my program first, rerun it, and I can get 5. Every time you do person dot the property name and you assign a value to it, you are hitting the set part of this property, like you are calling the set method. And when you call it without an assignment, it means you want to read its value, and you are hitting the get part of this, which is, by the way, both of these are called accessors. Accessors for this property. Okay. Yeah. Now let's move on to situation number 2. As you can see, I have here, I have the same property, but I have taken the set out. There's no set. So how am I going to deal with this? What does removing the set mean? What does it make? What is the problem now? The problem now is I can't set the value of ID. Why? Because this ID property is read only. What made this read only is removing the set from it. So now it doesn't have a set. How do I set the value of this? The only way to set the value of this is through creating a constructor. Now I can come here and say integer value, or let's call it ID because it's the constructor. Now ID equals ID. This is allowed. You can only set the value for a property that doesn't have a set accessor through the constructor. Now if I can come here and say PS5, now this works. If I print the value, I will get 5. Now, okay, this is all about this when you take out the set. Now let's comment this and move on to the third point. We have here, we have a property with set but with no get. This is not allowed. You can't have a property that has only a setter but doesn't have a getter. Why? Because two reasons. Compiler doesn't allow it, but if we think about it, we see this is nonsense. This doesn't make sense because this is not usable. You can't be using this. You can't get the value of it. So if you can't get the value of it in the class or outside the class, then why declaring this property from the first place? That's why this is not allowed. Number 4, we have this situation where we have, instead of removing the set or removing the get, we have what is called private set. Okay, what is private set? Private set doesn't allow me to come here and doesn't allow me to set the value outside the class, only outside the class. So this is not allowed because the setter is private. So if we read the message, come on, we see that because the set accessor is inaccessible, because the set accessor of this property now, of this ID property, is now private. What does private mean here? It's not, be careful, this is not like the absence of set. Private set means I can set the value of ID only inside the person class. So if I set public void set ID, and so here I can say ID equals ID, and this works. And if I come here, I have now this way of setting, or yes, setting. If I say person dot set ID, say 5. Now if I run the program, I will have 5 printed in the terminal. So now I have a way to set this ID. Also, the same question arises, which is, why should I make this private if I made this function public? So everyone can now set this ID, but in a different way. This is also right, but again, you can add some validation here. We can switch to another version of writing a function, a method, and we can say if id smaller than 0, uh, I don't want it to be smaller, I want it to be only bigger, then I will say id equals id. Otherwise, don't set the value. Usually, what you will have here is, for example, we throw an exception, we send a notification, we do something to tell the user of this object that something went wrong here, and you are not allowed to set the value of ID if it's not greater than 0. Okay, that's why we can use this. And sometimes this set ID might not exist at all. Sometimes we only set sometimes we only set the ID from inside the class. This is the meaning of this private word. This private word means we can only set the value of ID from within this class. Sometimes we only want to do this. Maybe I have done some functions, some operations. These operations can result in the changing of the value of a property, but I don't want this value to be changed outside this class. I want it to only be changed as a result of these operations. That's why I can mark my setter property as private. That's all. Let's move on to number 5. Number 5, we have the same thing here. Let's comment this out. But now I have this word in it. Okay, what is this word in it? This word in it means initially or initial or initialization. It means this property can only be set during object creation or through the constructor, which means the same thing. You can't set it inside the class or outside the class, only in the constructor. That's all about it. Okay? We also have what is called full property. A full property is really a full property. Full property means that we have a private field and a getter and setter for this private field, as we see here. Looks almost the same. Let's see how do we create one. We say prop full and we hit tab twice, and we can get this ID. As I told you, as a convention, we usually make the private fields underscore and all small letters, and their getters and setters. We can make this ID, and that's it. Now we have a private field. We have for this private field a getter method, and we have a setter method. Also here you can add some validation. So we can come here, we can make this like this, and also we can say if ID greater than 0, okay, we can now close this. Only now I will set the value. This is called a very simple validation. We can validate your property, your value before setting it. But the difference here is you can access the ID directly without using a method like here, for example. Here we had to use set ID and we had to use get ID. Here you don't have to do this. All you have to do is you come here and say person dot ID equals 7, and you read it like this. If I run this now, we get 0. Why do we get 0? There is something wrong here. 0 value. Something is here. Because this shouldn't be a value. is greater than 0, not id. Id is always 0. Now we get 7. Okay. Yeah, this is validation. And now if we try to make this minus, we will get 0. If you guys know why I'm getting 0, please leave that in the comment. If not, tell me. I will make a video and tell you why are we getting 0. I mean, why aren't we getting, for example, not allowed? Why aren't we getting the -7? Why we are getting always getting 0? Why is this? If you know, please leave it in the comment. Otherwise, also in the comment, tell me that you don't know so I can explain to you. Validation. There's nothing more to talk about validation. This is what I meant with validation. One more thing I would like to show you. I would like to set a breakpoint here and start the program, and you will see when I call this, means I am calling the set part of this property. So the program will stop here when it hits this line of code. We will make another breakpoint here. So what you guys are going to see is that the program will hit this line first, then will move on immediately to this line, which is 69 here. Okay, let's start and see what's going to happen. As you can see, the program hits this line first. Now if I click continue, it's going to hit the set and go inside the set and test. Now if I went and if I press on step over, this value, which is -7, is going to be tested against 0 if it's greater than 0. If it is, we are going to come in here. If it's not, it's going out. It's leaving the if clause and doing nothing because we have no code here. Let's see this. As you can see, it jumped right over outside of this set. To do more proof, we can say if value is smaller than 0, we want to print value must be, or it's better, cannot be less or equal to 0. Else id equals 5. Let's save and run the program and see what we are going to get. First of all, we hit this line and we click on continue. Now we are entered the set. Let's step over step by step. Now the value, which is -7, is going to be tested against 0 if it's smaller or equals to 0, and indeed it is. So we are entering this if and we are printing this to the console. Let's try it. See, we have entered the if. Now this is going to be run, which means the else is not going to be run. Now we are out of this program. We come here, we print the value, and now we will see we have the value cannot be less or equal to 0, and the value is 0. That's it. That's it for this video, guys. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment, and see you in the next video.